with Renee. All right, everybody. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of Saturdays with Renee, right here on what is for now BPM. And forgive me, everyone, and Renee and our guests and everyone, and just the transition from one account to another, and a couple of things up on the back end caused the confusion with the stream location. So my apologies. But we are here, and we will be we'll do a quick, what is that, 100 and some minutes, and be out of the way for warrior class and be on with our day. But Renee, it is good to see at least your symbolic image again. How are you?
I am I am you know what, honestly, it's been a rough
Yeah.
couple of weeks, man.
Yeah.
It's been rough. I
Yeah.
can't I'm like I want to lie and act like no, 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 we good. Yeah, I'm not good. Like it's just been rough and we're it's gonna take some stuff. I got a lot of stuff I got to deal with now. And sometimes when you are a person of what's the best way to put it? Conviction, I guess. Like I've learned a real lesson about being a person who just decides like I'm just going to do the thing that's the right thing. It's not always going to work out to your benefit. So we're gonna get there, and it'll all work itself out. And when I have a sure, I don't mean to be so cryptic with the folks, but I'm not 100% sure how public I should be about what's going on yet. Um, and I'm still trying to solidify legal representation. And so once I once I figure all of that stuff out, then and I'm sure that it's not going to create an additional issue. It may take a whole show to break down all the chaos that has happened in my world in the past month. That's how crazy
Well,
it is.
I will happily ride shotgun whenever you're ready to break it all down publicly. But it is having had a glimpse at it. It is a lot, and we all here waiting. Like my daughters have said, like their new thing with apparently with the youth is they like to say there's a war behind you, and
Mm,
I actually love that.
I do.
There's a
I
war
do.
behind you. So that's why, that's what I got there's a war behind you.
I do love
So
that. I do love
whenever you're
that.
ready, let us know. We'll kick it up a notch. But yeah. So that's why I always say when asked how you doing, I'm always saying as good as could be expected. That's as honest
That is
as I
as
think,
on yeah. That is
succinct,
probably the best
vague,
way. Yes.
but I don't have to lie and say I'm good. It's
Right.
all good.
Right.
Like no,
Right.
no, as good as could be expected. Let's.
Right.
So
It's
yeah.
something.
But just so folks are clear, please do. The links are all in the show description already. Please do support us via Patreon. We are demonetized for 90 days here on YouTube. And kind of what you were saying, I feel a similar kind of way as to how much should be said about that publicly. But the reality is that that's where we are. So if you can, this affects the entire platform, all the hosts. So as to the extent that you have been supporting or are a supporter, if you are a member of the YouTube channel, we'd be very happy to have you cancel that membership and move it over to Patreon. If you're not currently a member and can find ways to contribute, please go over to Patreon. We will, I promise you, we are endeavoring to produce more Patreon specific content as we reorganize things here on the platform. So, but in the interim, that is the only way to support us financially. Otherwise, you can continue. We do encourage you to continue to subscribe to the channel, which costs you nothing. Like, share, comment. All of those things still help the channel, even in this demonetized state. So,
Right.
just a quick note on that.
And um So I will make this one note that the Discord is chomping
Oh
and
wow.
heavily confused about what's going on. So I did make mention to Kamal, like, I don't know, maybe like a quick, like, we're working on it, we'll have a statement soon thing might be a good idea. Just, just because I think we owe it to folks to let them know, like,
I agree.
despite all that seems to be happening, we have them in mind. And it's gonna get to a place where there's less confusion, but we're, you know, all the stuff is still gonna be here. That
Yeah, everybody's here. Everybody's, I mean, well, not everybody,
not
but a
everybody.
majority of the
Yeah.
shows are still here. And things have just been happening very quickly. Literally during the show yesterday, during EYL, things were happening. So it's part of it is we all haven't even caught our breath and caught up to the latest.
Right. Right.
But I'm 100%. Kim last night, I stayed on as long as I could, and she had a lot of on her platform, a lot of good things and important things to say.
Yeah.
But I promise you, I can't personally, selfishly, I can't wait for the
Agreed.
like
Agreed.
the green light, like
Agreed. Agreed.
so.
Agreed. We met last
But
night and I was like, all right, I've had enough. Like, I'm over it. I don't do chaos well. And like, there's enough chaos swirling in my life, like not having anything to do with the channel. I'm not trying to add no more chaos. Like, let's get it
there it
wrapped
is.
and move forward. So
So it does look like our guests, at least one of them is here, and
okay.
special guest, and we can go ahead and get started there. Do a quick transition break and come back and have you introduce our guests if that's cool, and
Works for
then
me.
let's go. So we're just going to continue on with Saturday with Renee. That's it still works. So okay. All right.
All right, everybody. I am bringing to you Professor Horace Campbell, who I will try my best to remember to refer to as Professor Campbell. I've been getting yelled at for not calling him by the loving name. Um, Professor Campbell is a professor at Syracuse University with the African American Studies and Political Science Department. He is also the chair of the Global Pan-African Movement of North America, which is one of the Pan-African groups that I have been working with now for a few years. And we do political education and just basic education on all things involving Africans across the world. And I'm very, very excited that he was able to join today. We were hoping that Mahi, who joined us a few months ago to discuss the Sudan, would be able to join. However, she is currently participating in the encampment on the Syracuse University campus, and she's been sent the link. If she has the opportunity, I told her to jump on whenever she can. But we're standing with her as she does the real work on the ground there on campus with the other students. But welcome, Malamu. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And
Thank you.
Excited to have you here.
Thank you, Renee. Tell me the name of your show again.
So the name of the show is Saturdays with Renee, which
Saturdays with Renee.
Yes.
And Saturdays with Renee beams out to who?
Everyone via YouTube and all the other streaming platforms. We are part of a collective that is currently known as Black Power Media, and we're determining if we're going to change titles or not.
We're all over the world, Professor Campbell. We're all over. The whole the diaspora tunes in. Yeah. The universe.
Thank you. I want to say that Renee has been a steadfast fighter for the global Pan-African movement. I don't want to give her her age. I've known Renee for a few decades, at least more than a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And she is one of the budding leaders in the struggle for social change in this country. So thank you both for inviting us from the Global Pan-African Movement to share this platform. And I hope at the end we will also say something about Global Pan-African Movement and its African Liberation Day. And then Rennie can put up the link on the YouTube for those who want to join us for May 25th.
Yes, we will definitely make sure we cover the ALD program that's coming up.
Thank you.
So we are going to start in the Sahel and have, there's a lot going on right now. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, Professor Campbell, is I was, prepping to make sure we had links and things to share is, and Jared, there's a line of links on the Sahel region on the run sheet. But yesterday, so there's been an ongoing thing happening in the Sahel with trying to remove the U.S. troops and shut down the base in Niger. And the U.S. actually announced yesterday that the Pentagon is ordering all U.S. troops to remove from Niger. So this has just been announced, and they're talking about removing all 1,000 troops. There's another article which speaks on the Russian troops who have moved in and started to use the base that is currently in Niger. So do you want to, give us some, you have so much information. So do you want to talk a little bit about what's happening there and the impact of, them actually getting the U.S. to remove themselves from where they are
Okay.
not wanted?
Thank you very much. I am very careful not to react to what the media says about West Africa or anything to do about Africa. One of the things we are attempting to do in the Global Pan-African Movement is to provide information about Africa. It is true that the United States has been asked to leave Niger, but one cannot go by what the headline said about the United States leaving Niger. One has to place this in a context of what has been going on in this region since the United States and NATO orchestrated the destruction of Libya and the assassination of Gaddafi. So, for your listeners, I would urge them not to start from the starting point of the United States. Let me start with the good news. The good news is that last month there was an election in Senegal. Senegal is the westernmost point of the Sahel. And in the elections, the candidate of France lost decisively. And this election was an election that brought to power a group that was called PASTEF, that brought to the forefront in Africa new forms of political organizing. And this new form of political organizing meant that they went to the grassroots and built networks among the people. And we were engaging with the foreign minister of the Senegal in the Global Pan-African Movement, and she gave us an outline of their victory. And she talked about the 7 different bases that they mobilized. These were the workers, the farmers, the women, the students, teachers, traders, and transport workers. For me, who has been studying political change in Africa, when there is talk about democracy and organizing people, this was a novel form of organizing grassroots forces so that they were going to take power by overwhelming the electoral system and demonstrating the power of this new movement. And so they have come to power, and this sister, Yassine Fall, she's now the Minister of African Integration. It's the first time we've seen a minister like that, Minister of African Integration and Foreign Affairs. Now, the program of PASTEF is unclear, because we know that the fundamental issue for PASTEF and the people of Senegal is how to break the control of France over their society, over their economy, and over every aspect of life. Many in the audience would not know that in West Africa, the countries that were formerly French colonies are tied to France through a currency arrangement that ensures they do not have monetary independence. So there are many problems facing the people of Senegal and West Africa: military ties to France, economic ties to France, trading ties, telecommunication ties. So these are the challenges of the people of Senegal. But they have entered political power in the context of a new situation in West Africa. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, there has been change of regimes in those countries. And those are change of regimes, although represented by military elements, these are part of a popular move against French imperialism in Africa. And so the new development in West Africa is the formation of what is called the Alliance of Sahelian States. The Alliance of Sahelian States is a new military political arrangement between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, this is a building block for the unification of Africa, because the Alliance of Sahelian States have agreed on military, foreign policy, and financial cooperation. And what we do know is that they're working very hard to set up their independence from France and to break from the French franc. And we know that Senegal has been meeting with the Alliance of Sahelian States. So we have an entire new political situation in West Africa, across the Sahel, starting with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And now we can add Senegal to this. Yesterday, in Chad, there was supposed to be an election, and the son of the former president, Debe, was crowned as the winner of the elections. But that's a very unstable situation. So all across the Sahel, from Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, to the Sudan, we have a situation where people are steering and seeking to break from Western domination. Now, you started by speaking about Niger, and I think it's important for the audience to have some context of what has happened in Niger. For those who have been following the news in Africa, after the United States and NATO destroyed Libya and killed Colonel Gaddafi, the Tuaregs and other forces that were in Libya, some of the anti-people elements among the Tuareg were brought into West Africa and launched a war in Mali and Burkina Faso. And France launched an operation, Operation Barkhane. And these operations were supposed to fight the terrorists who France itself unleashed from Libya. Then France went to the United Nations to get support from the United Nations to fight the so-called terrorists. So France was setting a situation to destabilize Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And so since the destruction of Libya in 2011, there's been a state of instability in this region. In the case of Mali and Burkina Faso, there were military regimes that broke with France and asked France to leave. And in 2020, 2021, when these military regimes asked France to leave, France sent their soldiers to Niger. Now, in July of last year, the Nigerian army staged a military coup d'etat against the government. But Niger is special in the sense that this was a place where France went to after they were thrown out of Burkina Faso. But Niger was special because the United States in northern Niger had established a military facility at Agadez. We do not know what the nature of the military facility was. The media gives different reports, whether it was a drone base, whether it was to surveil Algeria. When I was in Niger, the Nigerians told me that the real objective of the base was to surveil Algeria, because France, the United States and France was very worried about the future of Algeria. So that is why I said that we should not go by what the media said. Niger was brought into this alliance of the United States and France against terrorists. But in Niger in 2017, 4 American soldiers were killed at Tongo Tongo. And these 4 American soldiers who were killed at Tongo Tongo, we do not know the circumstances or under whose command they were. Up to today, 2024, 7 years later, there is an investigation by the Pentagon into what happened there. And the ABC has done a documentary called 3212 Unredacted that seeks to get to the bottom of what happened in Tongo Tongo in Niger. So the Central Intelligence Agency, French intelligence, US intelligence, and US Special Forces have been operating all over Niger, creating troubles. Now, since the creation of the Alliance of Sahelian States, these states have sought to diversify their sources of military capital. And their sources of military capital now includes Turkey, it now includes Malaysia, and includes Russia. But the Western media and Iran, Turkey, Iran, and Russia. But the Western media has sought to present what is going on in Niger as a removal of these innocent American troops from Niger, replaced by Russia. Now, one of the new developments of the relationship with Russia is that the governments of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso has been able to get equipment from Russia and Iran to the point where they can control their airspace. So for the first time, they have been able to control their airspace, and France and the United States cannot operate in these countries at will. And because they control their airspace, they were able to control the telecommunications between the external supporters and the anti-people elements. I will not call them terrorists because I don't like to use that formulation, terrorists. One of the anti-people elements that was involved with the killing of the people at Tongo Tongo was captured and killed this week in Mali. So there has been a sea change in the security situation in this region, in the ability of the people to provide the kind of security that they need coming out of this new political military alliance that is called the Alliance of Sahelian States.
Thank you, Professor. So this is why, I pull up US media normally just because it's easier for people to find, but it's only to start the conversation. So just so you know, we don't base anything off US media here because we're well aware of the levels of propaganda that happen within that space. But I like to give people things that, just so they understand what the propaganda is being sold on this end so that we can dig deeper. So that's why you're here, because you are my expert on many, many things. So that was a lot. And I thank you for all of that information, as well as giving the audience an understanding of how things are moving within the Sahel region and what has recently happened in Senegal with their recent elections. And GPAM, which is our organization, did a political education, internal education on the Senegal elections. And as soon as I finish uploading that to make sure that it's for public consumption, I will be sure to add it. I'll tell Jared to add it to the link so people can watch what we learned as we had that conversation. So even though Mahi is not here, let's move to what's going on in Sudan and these recent, this sudden understanding that the U.S. now has for, what genocide means and all these things. So this was the PBS News Hour. PBS annoys me sometimes because they have a way of sometimes being useful and sometimes not. But this conversation was an interesting one because they brought in someone from not the from the Human Watch, and so now all of a sudden, again, like I said, the U.S. is concerned about genocide and famine and all those things, and I'm always curious as to why. As to how it's curious to me how the U.S. can know how something is in one place, not know that it's the same thing in another place, depending on if there's a resource that they're looking to steal or if there's a group that they're looking to oust. That's always how it always seems to me that that's what what these conversations and how the U.S. responds to anything is dependent on. But the U.S. aid administrator made this big statement, and they accused the Sudanese armed forces of obstructing humanitarian aid from reaching Darfur. And she spoke on about, the starvation and what's happening. And then now there's this new report that's come back regarding a large group of assassinations that happened and the burning down of the city in Sudan. Can you talk a little bit more about what's happening in Sudan now and perhaps link it to what, how the U.S. uses its political power for different things depending on what their actual goal is in a specific region?
Oh, thank you. I would want to say that we are studying the situation very closely, and Mahi from the Global Pan-African Movement and myself, we went to Sudan 2 years ago to speak to the leaders of the revolutionary process. One of the most profound and advanced revolutionary process in the world has been going on in the Sudan since 2012. That revolutionary process reached its apogee in 2019 when the alliance, again, a new political alliance of workers, women, students, professionals, and especially tea sellers, created a political alliance to overthrow the Bashir regime. When this revolutionary process matured to the point of overthrowing the military in 2019, another branch of the military stepped in, and the United States of America, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Norway said there was going to be a transition process for 3 years. And in this transition process for 3 years, there would be the 18 months where the government would be in the hands of the military, and the next 18 months, it would be in the hands of the civilians. This was the agreement for a transition away from military rule. the United States and the so-called Western humanitarian agencies were deadly afraid of the revolutionary process. And so they supported the militarists, the same people that they're now complaining about. In 2021, the militarists, when they should have given up power in the transition process, the military staged a coup d'etat, removed the civilian prime minister, and both factions, the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces, aligned to take power in 2021 in October. It's very important that your listeners follow very closely what is happening. In this, the United States was an ally of the militarists on both sides, the people who they claim were committing genocide and the Sudanese armed forces. This coup d'etat placed the United States as an ally of Russia. I want your listeners to understand this, because the RSF was supported by Russia, the United Arab Emirates, and the military, the Sudanese armed forces, was supported by Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So there was this alliance. Why was there this alliance in the Sudan? Sudan not only had a revolutionary process, Sudan is a major producer of gold. It has one of the most organized working class, and the revolutionary forces were very mature, and they could create the spark for spreading the ideas of people-centered governments in Chad and in other parts of North Africa. So the United States, Russia, the Emirates, and Saudi Arabia were allied in keeping these military forces against the revolutionary forces in the Sudan. That was 2021. By 2023 April, these two military factions went to war against each other. And that war has displaced millions of people and created the situation that the West is now lamenting. Now, I have seen the United Nations, the United States representative to the United Nations making great speeches about how terrible the situation is in the Sudan, about the paramilitary forces, about the genocide. But these are hollow, because the United States of America and the United Arab Emirates and the Saudi Arabia are the forces that are keeping these elements in power. And what the people are calling for is for sanctions against both factions of the military, and to have a transition to civilian rule where the people can achieve the goals of removing military rule in the Sudan that has been there since 1989.
Yeah, that's and we talk about this a lot at GPAM, and I know it's something we're watching. Can you maybe, because this is something I think, I don't know if a lot of people are really clear on what the map of Africa looks like.
Can you
But
put it up? Can you?
I don't. Can you find one real quick? Because I think people should also understand the positioning of the Sudan. Because if you look at where the Sudan is in connection to its entryway into the Sahel region, its entryway into Libya, its entryway into Egypt, right? It is a space in which it is beneficial, in my opinion, for the U.S. to see chaos and discord. So, can you talk about that a little bit, Professor Campbell, if you can, just to get people to understand? There's always a plot when you're thinking of how the U.S. participates in these things, and there's a reason for it. And one of my beliefs is that part of the reason is because they want to make sure that if there is chaos somewhere, then it allows them to to have kind of a foothold in a place where they have no business.
Thank you. As you can see, Sudan borders so many countries: Ethiopia, Eritrea, Egypt, Chad, Central African Republic. It orders these countries, and it's on the Red Sea, just across from Saudi Arabia. So there's strategic importance of the Sudan. The Sudan, like most countries in North Africa, is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multiracial country. And this is why the revolution in the Sudan is so important, because unlike other countries that would have one ethnic group or one group of people, we've had a situation in the Sudan where people who claim Arab identity have been oppressing people who claim African identity. And those people who claim Arab identity have been aligning themselves with the conservative forces in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Whatever identity they claim, the people who were the most oppressed in the Sudan were the farmers, the workers, and the women. And this is why this revolution is so profound, because they were able to cut through the confusion of so-called identity and build the consciousness of the working peoples. And it is not by accident that women are at the forefront of this revolution: professional women, working women, tea sellers. And they have created a new political momentum in this region to be able to change the political calculus. And this is what the United States and the 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 conservative Islamists in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, in United Arab Emirates and Egypt, they're afraid of. They're afraid of this because Egypt is a tinderbox. Egypt has 100 million persons. People revolted against the military regime in 2011. There was a counter-revolution in 2013. And the Egyptian government is an ally of Israel in oppressing the Palestinian peoples. So one of the things that the military has done is that the present military government in Sudan, they have acceded to what is called the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords is that agreement to normalize the surveillance and intelligence relationship between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and certain Arab countries. So Morocco, Sudan have normalized relationship with Israel, following on what has been done for the past 30 years by Jordan and Egypt. Normalizing relations with Israel means that you support Israel in their oppression of the Palestinian peoples. And all of that has exploded in their faces with the uprising and resistance of the Palestinian peoples. So the Sudanese military is in alliance with Israel through the Abraham Accords, and Israel provides security information, intelligence, and surveillance information for the Sudanese government in this alliance with the United States against the people of the Sudan.
That's why I see Jared shaking his head. That's why I asked the question, because I knew it was gonna get the breakdown it needed. So perfect segue. We had agreed that the next thing that we'd move on to is talking about what is happening in Palestine and the current struggle there, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that's affecting things here. There's a line, Jared, on the run sheet. I think it's these people are ghouls, I think is what I called the row. As we know, Israel has moved forward with their invasion of Rafah. And I'll be honest, temporarily my brain is not able to handle watching too much of what's happening there. but I thought it would be interesting to see some of the things that that the Israeli journalists and government are talking about now that, you know, people want to jump up and down because this one partial shipment of you know, military weaponry is being paused, right? I mean, it's so nonsensical to be excited about these things, in my opinion. But I thought it would be interesting to take a look at what the Israeli side is, what they're responding to this decision, so that people can understand how ghoulish these people actually are.
אני רק מזכיר לך שביידן הציב לנו קו אדום וזה 30,000 פלסטינים. 29,990 הוא עובר. כן, ידידיה לסיום, בבקשה. מה 30,000 כל יום? אני רק מזכיר לך שביידן הציב לנו קו אדום.
I mean, giggling. I just can't even. It's just so gross, honestly. And then there's another one with a woman speaking about changing the missiles. If they're not going to send these missiles, this is what we'll do.
זאת הברית מאיימת שלא תיתן לנו טילים מדויקים. וואלה, יש לי חדשות לארצות הברית, ויש לנו את הזכות להתגונן. אז אולי במקום להשתמש בטיל מדויק ולהוריד חדר ספציפי, או בניין ספציפי, אני אשתמש בטילים הלא מדויקים שלי, ואני פשוט אמוטט 10 בניינים. 10 בניינים! עשרה בניינים, זה מה שאני אעשה. ארצות הברית מאיימת שלא תיתן לנו טילים מדויקים. וואלה, יש לי חדשות לארצות הברית. ויש לנו את הזכות להתגונן.
Yeah. No, it's good. So, you know, these are conversations that I've been having even more recently as I realize how many people are fully invested in this idea of Israel, and they have to defend themselves, and, you know, it's all Hamas's fault, and like all of these things. Can you, Professor, I'm just going to open the floor for you to talk about this impact, like what is happening and the impact on global Pan-Africa as these things are moving forward in Palestine in the way they are.
Thank you. From time to time in the history of society, there comes a moment when certain events bring contradictions to the forefront. And the event of October 7th brought a major contradiction for humanity to the forefront. And that contradiction is whether humanity will accept apartheid. The challenge for people living in societies like this one is whether we will accept genocide, and whether some genocide will be accepted and other genocide will not be accepted. Let me give you 3 examples of genocide. The first genocide is the genocide against the First Nation peoples in the Americas. There are 100 million people living in these Americas, from Nova Scotia to Argentina, and these peoples have been decimated over 400 years. For your listeners, I want to recommend to them a book by Dunbar Ortiz called The People's History, Indigenous People's History of the United States of America. That genocide is not recognized. In fact, it is the opposite. In schools and in books and the popular culture, it is celebrated. That genocide is celebrated. And people think that colonialism and settler colonialism was good because it brought us this great land of the free and the home of the brave. The second genocide I want to talk about is the genocide of African peoples in the transatlantic slave trade and the colonial mission. those who listen to your show would have known about the history of genocide of Africans, but many do not know of the most recent genocide of, say, the French, the British, and the Belgian, and the Belgians killing 10 million people in the Congo. And the Europeans refused to accept this genocide of the British in Kenya, the genocide of the Germans in Namibia, the genocide of the Belgians in the Congo. The third genocide I want to talk about is that of the genocide of the Jews in Hitler's Germany. This was horrific, and everyone stood against that genocide. There are many other genocides that one can speak about. One can speak about the genocide of the Armenians in 1914. One can talk about the genocide in China in 1937. But let us focus on those three, because those three that we mentioned are foremost in the history books in the United States of America. Now, the State of Israel was established out of the guilt of Europeans from that third genocide. And from what is taught in the military colleges in the United States and what is taught in the popular textbook in the United States, that's the only genocide that is worth recollecting. The fact that 6 million Jews were killed in Europe. As a result of this experience, the State of Israel was established in 1948. And the State of Israel was established in 1948, and it was established with the support of the United Nations. But since 1956, there has been at least 7 wars in this region. The most notable from the point of view of your audience is the 1967 war, where the Israelis took over the territories that were there for the Palestinians in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, and in Gaza. So Israel has occupied these territories and has lived with the Palestinians as a settler colonial state with all of the apartheid-like conditions of a settler colonial state. No one in the mainstream academia in the United States wanted to accept that this was settler colonialism, apartheid, except that in the past 10 years, the situation has become so bad that Human Rights Watch and other organizations have said that Israel was an apartheid state. And someone was telling me about a thesis that was written in Oxford about the conditions in the West Bank, in the occupied territories, and the level of surveillance and brutality, cultural genocide, economic oppression, and the killing of innocent peoples. In other words, what is happening in Israel it's like an open air prison. The Israeli intellectuals and the Israelis associated supporting the State of Israel with supporting their apartheid conditions. And the people of Palestine have been fighting since 1948 for their country. Now, since this war started in last year, in October, the Israelis have killed more than 34,000 people. And you're right, Renee, it is hard to look at what is going on before your very eyes. The International Court of Justice, under the moral and political and legal leadership of South Africa, called what is happening in Gaza an impending genocide. It is now accepted that Israel is violating international law in its prosecution of the war against the Palestinian peoples. And this has brought the entire political situation in Europe and North America to a new height, because whereas the media and propaganda kept saying Israel had the right to defend itself, and no one would complain about Israel having the right to defend itself. But Israel does not have the right to commit genocide and with the support of US taxpayers. So there's been a movement in the world calling for a ceasefire and to end this potential genocide against the Palestinian people. This movement has been going on with demonstrations every day, every week. In fact, there was a US soldier who last month immolated himself before the White House to say he, as a US military person, cannot be a supporter of genocide. Now, here's the challenge in the Black community. In the US Black community, the progressive elements in the Black church were the first to take out a full-time ad in the New York Times to say we should stop the genocide. But the conservative Christian fundamentalists who interpret the Bible literally say that the Israelis are God's chosen people, and as God's chosen people, they have the right to do what they have to do. So the Christian fundamentalists are supporting the Israeli state, whereas the majority of human beings who are against settler colonialism, who are against genocide, who are against cultural massacres, are calling for a ceasefire with the end of this war against the Palestinian people. The most recent development in this opposition to the Israeli genocidal war has been the actions of students across the United States. The brave students in 120 universities and campuses have made demands that their universities support a ceasefire, end collaboration with Israel, end intellectual collaboration and research with the Israeli Defense Forces, and to be transparent in their relations and their investment with Israel. And these students, the demands basically uniform. And instead of addressing the genocide, instead of addressing the killing of the Palestinians, the conservative Republicans and even President Biden has brought this thing about anti-Semitism, that what is going on in the campus is anti-Semitism. So we have a full-blown political crisis in the United States of America, just as at the time of the struggle for human rights and civil rights, when they said the people going on campuses were outside agitators. They're saying the same thing today in relationship to the demands of students for changing the relationship about how you teach about genocide, how do you teach about settler colonialism, and how do you disinvest. And the students have been calling for boycotting Israel, sanctions against Israel, and divesting from Israel.
Thank you. And it's been very, it really has been an interesting thing to watch as this all unfolds. And so, Jared, you haven't said a word. Am I
For
talking
what?
too much?
No, for what?
Okay. Okay.
The only thing I would want to just quickly add, though, is that in addition to defining the protests as anti-Semitism, they've been defined as violence,
Yes.
and abuse, literally, in the language of the New York Times, and then in the voice of what's his name, that congressman was, who said that they're little Gazas, these encampments.
Mm-hmm.
They're tacitly, if not more than that, being defined as terrorists.
Right.
But yeah, but there's no need. There's nothing. What more should I be saying? Yeah.
So I don't know if people remember a while back, Ricky Ryan had sent me down a rabbit hole looking at the military and research connections to U.S. universities, and how overwhelmed I was by the amount of connections that existed, that I actually had not realized how deeply embedded these research projects were, and you know, the military complex doing research and providing internships and all of these things. And so, you know, I've always kind of I've always gone back to that list whenever these things are happening, because I don't know if people are fully cognizant of why these things are why it's going this way on college campuses, right? Why is it that students who are paying money because they have sought to go to this specific university or this specific college to attempt to learn, these are supposed to be places where people are supposed to engage and participate in critical thinking and become aware of all the things that are happening in the world, and how, you know, how they all feed back to what's happening currently, the historical basis, all these things. And then when they figure out that there is this insidious thing happening behind the scenes at the very place where they are giving their money in an attempt to better themselves as people. So then they realize, wait a minute, my tuition money is going to kill people somewhere on the other side of the planet. So that what? For what reason is this happening? And so they speak up, and they don't realize, and I don't know that the students don't realize it. I think a lot of the broader population does not realize that the reason the reaction is the way it is on college campuses is because of all of that money that is flowing behind the scenes to a college and university from Israel, from Israeli billionaires, as part of what's happening with the military complex and the research and the money that these colleges are getting for participating in those projects. So there's a real conundrum happening where part of this is all about trying to shut down and silence the conversation and discussion so that people understand that this is about capitalism, it's about imperialism, and it's about hegemony, right? People, if you don't understand that, then if all you're doing is watching the news and watching mainstream media, then you're under this impression that, oh my goodness, these kids are tearing up a campus, right? And you're not really understanding the full background of people understanding that capitalism is at the core of every problem. And once you are a person who has engaged in a conversation, a real conversation about capitalism, it is very, very hard to ignore the realities of the money that is flowing behind these universities and campuses, and how, in order to prevent that money from getting shut down, the only choice the college has is to shut the students down, because they can't have that, right? And so these encampments, really, there's a lot behind this that I think is a conversation that's not happening. And on line 17, and we won't be able to watch the whole thing but I want people to know this exists. They released this yesterday, and I think it's like maybe 10 minutes long. So I don't know if we have time to watch the whole thing, but this is such an amazing breakdown of the connection between the US government, the military industrial complex, and these colleges and universities, and why it is resulting in them attacking their own students for having the audacity to speak out about where the money is going from these campuses. And I'm so glad that they put this together. So I don't know if we can try and watch a little bit of it, and then we'll let Professor Campbell give some feedback, because this is happening right now at Syracuse University. There's an encampment. The university has a direct program where they do an exchange program with a university in Tel Aviv. They are participating in a research project with the military industrial complex. ESF, which is a Sunni school that operates off the campus of university, has its own separate research project, and it's all embedded in the same problem. So I found this morning. It really, it's well done.
Just let me know when to stop or pause, but here we go.
Engineering departments are financed by military corporations, for instance, and that is where the research is done. Some of the research is done in the corporations themselves, but the military research is done in engineering departments and in physics departments. And they are financed by this corporate lobby. But an equally, if even bigger story here is that corporations finance the universities, and corporations have a deep vested, especially the military-industrial complex, in the Middle East more generally. And the staging point for defending and advancing those interests in the Middle East passes through Israel.
College campuses across the US have transformed into battlegrounds. Thousands of students from over 120 universities are calling for an end to Israel's brutal military offensive in Palestine's Gaza and demanding that their universities divest from Tel Aviv-linked firms.
This must end now.
On the opposing side are the university authorities, supported by armed police and pro-Israel rioters who are employing repressive measures to quell the uprisings. But why have these campuses become a hotbed of protests? To understand this, one must grasp the influence Tel Aviv has wielded over these universities for decades. In the last decade, about 100 US colleges have reported receiving gifts or contracts from Israel, totaling $375 million. Many elite universities, such as Harvard and Columbia, boast multi-billion-dollar endowments from various corporations for financial sustainability. These institutions often use the endowments to invest in companies, many with ties to Tel Aviv or that support Israel's occupation, including Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Alphabet, and Amazon. Pro-Israel organizations and Zionist billionaires have maintained a steady stream of donations to universities across the US. They, along with the Israeli government, have engaged American students and staff with their Israeli counterparts through academic collaborations between US and Israeli universities over the years. This includes joint research projects, faculty exchanges, and student exchange programs. However, with student protests against the US's ongoing military support for Israel and its Gaza offensive gaining momentum, Zionist donors are now using their financial leverage to put pressure on the universities they fund, where students have been demonstrating. Billionaires like Bill Ackman, Mark Rowan, Edan Ofer of Israel, Victoria's Secret founder Les Wexner, Leon Cooperman, and Henry Sweeker have either cut off future funding or threatened to do so.
It's crystal clear to see, but that's been going on for many years, that wealthy individual donors say to the universities, if you don't crack down on this person, if you allow this pro-Palestinian activity on campuses to take place, we're going to withdraw our funding.
You can go ahead and just so we don't go too long. Professor Campbell, do you have? When I found, and that they just posted that yesterday, so this was just the fact that I follow that channel that I came across it, because I was actually going there to look for the woman who was talking about leveling 10 buildings, and discovered that they had released that yesterday. But I do want people, if they have, if they're able to go back and watch that, because they do a good job of, in a short amount of time, breaking down a lot of what is at the back, what is at the back end of what's happening. So Professor Campbell, do you want to share some thoughts on how this is playing out on university campuses and with regard to how the U.S. is not just responding to Israel, but to its own students?
Thank you. I would want to watch this in its entirety, but one of the things we have to be clear about is that a lot of the research and funding is not coming from the billionaires, but from taxpayers. And that the money that educates students in the United States come from normal taxpayers. The billionaire try to set the agenda of what is studied and what is researched. And one of the things I want to bring to your audience is the relationship between the United States military and the Israeli military. The use of surveillance technologies. And many would know of a company that is called Palantir, that collaborates with the Israeli Defense Forces. And some have heard about this new project called Lavender that targeted Palestinians, and how the deployment and weaponization of artificial intelligence tools has been harnessed by the Israelis and the US firms. So there is close relationship and collaboration between the United States and Israel on that front. And that is why this struggle against the genocide in Palestine is not going to be short. It's not going to be a sprint. It is going to be very long, because it intersects with Wall Street, it intersects with the university, it intersects with the oil companies, it intersects with the generals. And this is creating a problem for the Israelis, because unfortunately for them, at the top of the United States military now are two persons who have been placed there to try to put a chill on the racism and white supremacy in the United States military. They have the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Lloyd Austin. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is Charles Q. Brown, who is a black man. And the Minister of Defense, Secretary of Defense, is a black person. Both of these have said that Israel has faced a strategic defeat. Now, what we've seen is that inside the US military, there's an intense conflict going on between the white supremacists and the rank and file black forces. And many do not know about this conflict. It came to a head after January the 6th, when one black general, General William Walker, and a lieutenant colonel called two white generals absolute liars over their collaboration with the MAGA forces. And I will not mention their name. All of this was published in Politico, and there was an investigation by the House. But what is kept quiet in the United States is this tension within the military. And this tension in the military is compounded by the fact that the biggest expenditure of the federal government, over $1 trillion every year, is from the military. And this expenditure has been feeding the Republicans and MAGA forces. And some of the black generals are saying, well, we want to eat too. So not because they're progressive, but because they're standing up to the racism that's going on. So we have a tinderbox inside of the United States in the military at the present moment.
That's fascinating. And is it true that I just heard correctly, and I deleted the app, that the Waze app is connected to Lavender through either ownership or technology or some sort of incestuous relationship. So I don't know if you happen to know about that particular issue, but I did just hear about that in connection to the Lavender operation and AI that you were talking
what
about.
It is for about 10 years, Israeli surveillance technology was the most advanced. And that's why all of these governments in Saudi Arabia, in United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Egypt, align themselves with Israel, because Israel is supposed to have the best surveillance technology. But Palantir has been developing this technology to the point that they have surpassed the Israelis. And Palantir is run by Peter Thiel. And so this relationship between Israel and Palantir is something that progressive forces must point to, because while we are focusing on Donald Trump, one should focus on this alliance in the military for surveillance, thought control, military control, and mind bending. Because in the book there's a book about the 2016 elections, about the alliance between Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg, about how they fixed the election. So to come back to the Lavender process, about how they targeted Palestinians, one should study that. And what the students have done is, by focusing on this relationship between Israel, the United States and the corporations, they're blown open this apartheid and genocidal relationship. Now, for many people, they forgotten that during the war in Vietnam, when students were protesting in the war in Vietnam, it was said that the students were supporting communists and the United States was fighting communism. And if Vietnam won the war against the United States, then all of Southeast Asia would become communist. Well, Vietnam won the war. The United States lost. And the United States has not reckoned with their loss in Vietnam. The United States supported apartheid. The same statement went out in universities. The students are supporting communists. Nelson Mandela is a terrorist. The ANC is a communist organization. And the United States cannot divest from apartheid. The United States was forced to divest because in the long run, the peoples of Southern Africa defeated apartheid. The peoples of Palestine will defeat apartheid in Israel. Before they defeat apartheid in Israel, there will have to be changes in the governments of Morocco, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. And that is why this struggle is very complex and it will demand our stamina for the long run.
Just quickly, please, everybody, check out the interviews that we have on the channel with Barrett Brown, who I'm somewhat jokingly referred to as the digital John Brown, for all those discussions about Palantir, Peter Thiel, the cyber industrial complex. Just to add to what Professor Campbell was saying there, just to that particular tributary to be followed would be a good one.
Right.
Yeah, Renee.
And it's all connected. So, you know, I say this all the time, it's all connected. So when people don't understand that this current struggle in the media and what is being, you know, told to the general population of people who don't take time or don't have time to read or to find out, like, this is all rinse repeat, right? Every time there is some imperialist struggle that the U.S. is participating in because they are trying to make sure that they maintain their, you know, their status or structure or power or whatever have you in some region, and the people find out, and then they rise up to try and prevent the U.S. from continuing on that path, right? It turns into, you know, they're fighting for the wrong thing. We're fighting, you know, they're fighting against democracy. And, you know, it's always this same spin cycle that happens within US media. And I've been very, you know, I watch often how things are responded to so that I can have a clear sense of what people are actually being told in comparison to what is actually happening. And it is mind-blowing how this is being represented to the general population via mainstream media. So there's a line, Jared, on our run sheet called the US on Israel. And it's 3 separate Instagram clips that I just felt like you can't make this stuff up. So the first one in column B, this is this fool who I can't stand him. But I want people to hear how the U.S. responds when people ask direct questions about what is happening in Palestine.
Respectfully, Matt, I mean, they're dead because the armed forces of Israel killed them.
Going after Hamas fighters who were hiding behind civilians. I do just want to say, again, every time I get this question about the number of civilians that died in this conflict, it gets posed to me as a question about the government of Israel. And remember, it is Hamas that hides behind civilians. It's Hamas that has built tunnels under hospitals and schools and mosques, and at times hides in those facilities and puts civilians at harm's way. So I get there are very fair questions about how Israel has conducted this war, and I stand here and answer them, and the Israeli government answers them too. But it is also true that a lot of the harm to civilians is because of the way Hamas decided to embed itself in the civilian population in the first place. That in no way changes the burden on the government of Israel.
But respectfully, Matt, I mean, they're dead because the armed forces of Israel killed them.
Going after Hamas fighters who are hiding behind civilians. That has been true since day one. It remains true today. Go ahead.
You can't make it up. You cannot, like, this is, yes, Albert, he really said that. Like, you cannot make it up. It's unreal. So the next one is, I think it's UCLA that
this is.
Oh wait,
on the next, our favorite. It's our favorite mayor. Yeah.
It's our favorite mayor. Okay, I couldn't remember which one it was.
I couldn't wait to hear what he had to say. The hip hop mayor.
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Despicable that schools will allow another country flag to fly in our country.
Wow.
So blame me for being proud to be an American. And it's despicable.
He's so trifling.
He didn't disappoint though.
He is so damn trifling. I can't stand him. But he is just like, it is so classic, right? Just like Professor Campbell, you talked about, these Black people in high face, they always manage to like disappoint, right? They're always on the wrong side, and they're intentionally put there so that people can see a Black person supporting and standing behind this nonsense every time. So this is the clip from outside of the UCLA campus.
What's up, guys? Aaron Cohn here, counterterrorism analyst.
Oh, wow.
Law enforcement instructor. I'm down here at UCLA right now, and have the opportunity to spend a minute here with LASD, some of my associates. And I just want to take a minute right now to make it very clear that these guys here, this is one of the finest, this is the largest sheriff's office in the country right here. Special Enforcement Bureau, their SWAT team. You got SRT down here. You've got some search and rescue elements. This is some of the finest trained individuals, not just in the city of Los Angeles, but in the country. Sheriff's office around the country, they follow LA County Sheriff. You can see behind me, there's a little bit of staging going on. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the staging, just to keep everything nice and sterile as operations here are ongoing. But I just want to take a minute, let you guys know, down here with LASD, and, everybody here is ready to do whatever needs to be done to get this situation diffused safely and with the highest degree of selectivity. But again, LASD, this is the biggest sheriff's agency in the country, some of the finest deputies that I've worked with. And their capabilities, their tactics are incredible for, diffusing a situation like this that's happening on campus. Just want to say it's really important right now to support law enforcement. These are the peacemakers out here. These are the guys who are going to be risking their life to go in and not only pull those protesters out and protect the students, but we'll want to make sure these guys get home safely also. Down here at UCLA, stand by. I'm going to bring you guys some more.
I saw that.
I didn't mean to.
No. Well, she was gonna, but it's okay because I really wanted people to see him, with his setup. So first of all, I can't ever think of the LA Sheriff's Department without thinking of Charisse Castle. So if people don't know who Charisse Castle is and have not watched or listened or read to all the work she did at exposing the gangs that exist within the LA Sheriff's Department, please go do that. Because this man standing there talking about them being the greatest and how great, like, I can't. But also wanting people to understand how these things are being connected. So similarly to how Professor Campbell, you spoke about the military connections between Israel and the US, there's also police connections between the military and US. And the fact that we have all these officers who go to Israel to be trained. that we have the greatest level of surveillance all over the country. And a lot of that is, these are companies that are based in Israel that perfected their surveillance, quote unquote, using, against the Palestinian people. And now they're building towers, along the southern border. Well, what they claim is their border, at least, using these same surveillance tactics. This idea that you're sending a counterterrorism group to a campus because the students are protesting peacefully. Like, this is wild to me that this is happening. And I forgot to note, but as I'm talking about these connections and the military and the police and the college campuses, people also should remember that the choice of Tel Aviv to be the place where universities have these exchange programs, don't forget that's also where the NYPD has its own separate little base, right? So it is connected in some nefarious ways that I think people are often not thinking about or paying attention to. So I just wanted to point that out. So we watched all these. Professor Campbell, what are you thinking about?
Well, I'm thinking about your pet subject, which is the relationship between the Israeli Defense Force and the police department, and these new forms of surveillance in the United States in what is called Cop City in different parts of the United States of America. And the black officers, the black policemen, the black soldiers who are being trained in these paramilitary techniques, what Adams is doing in New York and bringing in the National Guard and to build up this thing about crime and protesters and terrorists and immigrants. We, from the progressive community, the Jewish people who are against Zionism, the Jewish people who support freedom in Palestine, the Black church leaders who support peace, the trade union movement, the environmental justice movement, it is time for us to move beyond single issues so that what we can do in New York City and New Jersey is to focus attention away from this talk about immigrants and crime and terrorists, to focus attention on the environment, on education, on healthcare, on mental health. We have to be the ones providing the intellectual and political leadership. Our children are going to school. They're coming out of schools not being able to read and write. New York City is one of the big experiments of how to control people in the face of rebellions. So we in the progressive community, whether we're in a church, a school, a mosque, or a temple, must collaborate with progressive persons to end the direction that this country is going in.
Thank you. And, you brought up Jewish people who are not Zionists and who are trying to, educate about this. So I did have a clip because, Jared, I always have a clip. So on the line, Judaism versus Zionism, this was actually shared with me from a group that is working to try and educate people on why they are not the same thing. And this is it's a very short video, but I think it's an interesting thing for people to have kind of in their back pocket for understanding.
It pains us so deeply as Orthodox Jews who are devoted to Judaism to see what Israel is doing in our name. They are carrying the sacred name of Judaism through the mud. Jews are humble, compassionate, and godly people. Zionists are identity thieves like no other. Through Zionism, the Holy Land became a political nation state. Our yearnings and prayer to rebuild the Holy Land was never a nationalistic cry. Just look at our history. Don't take my word for it. The Jewish people have never tried to take ownership of the Holy Land during exile. They just wished to live there in peace. We still want the same. Zionism is not Judaism.
And I think that's something, you know, with a lot of the conversations that I am having with people about anti-Semitism and what constitutes anti-Semitism. And I find that because there is no education happening, and but in these public spaces, in public schools, if you even attempt to teach these things, you are in trouble, right? There are teachers all over the country who are losing their jobs, getting pushed out, getting suspended. College campuses are going, like all of these things are happening because they don't want you to make the connection that within the Jewish community itself, there are Jewish people who are saying being anti-Zionist has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And it's a conversation that's being prevented because if you get people to understand that Zionism is part of a political construct and has nothing to do with religion, and therefore you cannot conflate the two, how does that, like, how do you continue this fight, you know, against stopping people from supporting Israel, right? You can't say one thing in multiple spaces about concerns with the way the Israeli government is treating Palestinians, how the people who follow the government, the Israeli people who follow the government, are also participating in this. It is not just, you know, this singular body of just government officials and excuse me, and military people that are doing this, right? There are Israeli citizens who are killing Palestinians, and I hope that didn't just get us in trouble. Unaliving Palestinians. I mean, it is what it is, right? You have people deciding, well,
as long as we don't put advocacy for that in the title.
Correct. Gotcha. And so, you know, this is not a situation where people I think a lot of people just don't understand, right? And so you have anti-Semitism that happens because people don't understand that Zionism is not Judaism. They're two different things. And as long as people don't understand that, it becomes a problem because people confuse the two. And then you start, it increases anti-Semitism, in my opinion, to have this gross conflation between those two things. What do you think about that, Professor Campbell?
Well, I think that is well said. Judaism is not Zionism. That is clear. Secondly, who is a Semite? How could you accuse Arabs of being anti-Semite when they themselves Semitic? So there's a level of confusion and actually miseducation that is going on through the media, but there's a specific purpose for this. So we on the university campus, the Jews for Palestine, and the Jewish people who want to end military collaboration with Israel. We don't want to end all collaboration with Israel. We believe there should be research. If you want to do research on environmental protection, on salination, desalination of water, you want to do research on vegetables and agriculture, but not research to support apartheid and the apartheid state. And the question that should be placed before the university authorities is how can we repurpose the university from war to saving the environment, from policing, and from destroying young Black people, because they're talking about STEM and going in the direction of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, when in the inner city of every major city, we have the destruction of the brains of young children, Black and brown children. So the question of militarism and the alliance with Israel is not separate from what's going on in our communities in the absence of affordable housing, the environmental conditions, the mental conditions, and the education of children. It's not a single issue. These issues are all interconnected, and they're related to the future of capital and capitalism, whether capitalism will destroy the planet Earth. In 1933 to 1945, there were fascists in the United States of America. And these fascist elements prevailed at a certain level in relationship to ideas. But then the anti-war, the anti-fascist forces mobilized. At that time, Black people were excluded from the military. Black people were excluded from Major League Baseball. Black people were excluded from universities playing basketball. Black people were excluded in Hollywood. 2024 is a different time. You cannot exclude Black people from baseball. You cannot exclude Black people from basketball. You cannot exclude Black people from the military. And you cannot exclude Black people from the university. So the fascist elements are even more desperate now. That is why they're banning books. Can you imagine banning the books by Toni Morrison? There is a level of desperation, and we must push the political forces in this country to stand up to fascism, that they cannot be silent when books are banned, and they cannot continue to pump money into the military when more money is needed in education, in housing, in cleaning their environment, and to provide affordable health care. The Global Pan-African Movement is a small force seeking to educate our community and our members about their responsibility as human beings, wherever they live. And the first responsibility as human beings is to be good humans. And as good humans, they want to support the just struggles of other humans wherever they live.
Right on.
So we're at like probably 10
How much
minutes.
more
right?
we have?
Well, we
Really?
have 10 more minutes, but if you have to go, Professor Campbell,
Yeah.
it's okay. We're good to let you go, and then we can wrap up. We can wrap up. But if you have to go, please feel free
Yes,
to jump.
I do have to go.
Okay.
I had scheduled 90 minutes here, but I would want to invite all of your audience to join the Global Pan-African Movement for African Liberation Day to talk about the African revolutionary struggle in global Africa yesterday, today, and tomorrow, so that we will invite you to join our webpage to get education about struggles in different parts of global Africa. And Renee, you have been doing this important work with the Global Pan-African Movement and in your own political space. So I want to thank you for inviting me and to be part of this discussion today.
Thank you so much for coming. And if you spot Mahi out there on the quad, please send her my love. I've been trying to make sure that I keep in touch with her, but I know she's busy. So please
Thank you so much.
that. And you be safe as well. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right.
That was a lot of information. He is like an encyclopedia.
No, that was great. And I am putting the link in the show description now so folks can refresh. And if they're watching live or if you're seeing this later, you'll see it in the show description to the Global Pan-African Movement, where more information can be attained.
Yeah. And we do a yearly, the African Liberation Day event is something that we've done yearly. But this was my major project, was helping rebuild the website. So we just rebuilt it and moved to the new website platform. And so we're very excited to have this opportunity to share this information, and there'll be a number of speakers, and it's we welcome the Global Pan-African Movement welcomes people to join us for that day. And if they have more questions and want more information, people can always follow and ask and let me know if there's any other information that they want. So I had told Josie from Public Square Amplified to send me a link because there's something going down in Flatbush, Brooklyn today, an anti-imperialist movement march in Brooklyn. But she forgot to send me the link. So I'll have a link, but if I get the information, I will be sure to try and make sure that I post that somewhere so that, if people want to get out to Brooklyn, if they can, and check that out, they can go down and go out and support. But there's a lot going on. There really is. It's mind-boggling, to be honest. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on. No, Mani, she said it's at 2:00. They're getting started in Brooklyn. But, Mani now just posted and said she thinks it got postponed. I'll have to, okay. I'll look. I'll look.
So there's also ALD in Lafayette Square Park in Baltimore.
Nice.
May 25th, if you're in this area. Where was the question you were just answering from Manny? I didn't see. That it got postponed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, okay, yeah.
So I don't know. If I get details, I will share, and then we'll see. Yeah,
what up with that, Andre? Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, what's up? What up with that? And all platforms were well over 445 or 445 totals on all platforms. So make sure all of you are supporting the Patreon. The link is in the show description on YouTube. So even if you're on another platform, come on over here, get to that link, and make sure you subscribe to this channel and support the Patreon as we continue to walk these demonetized streets. By the way, I saved this earlier. I'm down for this. I think we should have a Patreon poll for the name change. I agree.
There was actually some pretty good suggestions going on in the chat that I think we need to get in. We need to get in for consideration.
Yeah, the reverse hashtags, boy, I've been blocking. This has been every time I say something, they go tag Yvette and Tone. See what Jared's saying about y'all again, and saying all kinds of wild stuff. I'm like, can anybody ever just address yourself to the actual argument?
Never. Why would they do that?
I've just been a block party all week. I just be block. There
you go.
Block. And everybody, black people with American flags in your handle. That's
yeah. But as you mentioned block party, I'm glad you just reminded me of something. So I just dropped another link in our private chat.
All right.
So this is something that's new, apparently. And Lord. I think I'm fascinated by this, and I'm curious.
Did Diallo post this? Stop supporting celebrities. The blackout 2024. Okay.
Yes.
Word.
So apparently the youngins got together, and after watching, these people who are celebrities get dressed up and go to the Met Gala and pretend like, nothing is happening. People are now mad at which I'm all for. I'm not a big celebrity person. I've never been a person who was really like geeked up to see what the celebrities are wearing and all that nonsense. I was never like a red carpet watcher. It's just not really my thing. But I do think it's amusing that now what people are pushing for people to do is to not just unfollow, but to block celebrities, because if they start losing followers, then they actually lose money, because part of what they get paid for is, having people like it's paid based on how many followers they have, which means that all the ads or whatever reaches more people. So I think this is a fascinating ploy. I'm gonna watch it and see. I don't follow celebrities. I don't think I can actually, do anything. And Ricky, you might be right. Zero material, it's possible. But you know what? If we're making fun of people who think that walking the red carpet and getting, dressed up and pretending like nothing's wrong in the world I'm okay with the youngins deciding they're gonna do something, even if it means nothing long term. Even seeing people just
What
say,
is it?
we're gonna what?
A little black girl created the American flag. So what? Even if that is, to the extent that that's true, so what? A little black girl probably worked on creating many red, black, and green flags and African Liberation Day posters. What does that have to do with anything? Some black women apparently worked on the NASA project. No, I'm just playing. We don't have to support every single thing a black person participates in. We are conscripted to participate in a lot of nonsense. Our genius is constantly exploited for other people's. We don't have to, that's, but all right.
Oh, the things people talk about, man. It's like, ooh, Lordy Lord, I can't. But we are running up on time.
Yeah, we run up on time. So Renee, thank you again for putting together another great Saturday morning. Folks, again, one more time, support the Patreon, like, share, subscribe to the channel, but put your money at the Patreon. And thanks everybody for coming through.
Thank you.
Shout out to Professor Campbell. And
definitely.
So do all of that. Stretch. I believe Warrior class will make its way over here. So get yourself ready, and we'll see you next time. Next time, same place, right here for more Saturday with Renee.